All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Paradyme Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. In today's episode, we're going to be discussing Animal Farm by George Orwell. Great book. You should go ahead and pick it up. We're going to discuss kind of an overall summary of what the book's about and what our takeaways are for the book and how it applies to current day life. So, a little bit of background about George Orwell. His real name is Eric Arthur Blair. He's an English novelist, poet, essayist, journalist, and critic who wrote under the pen name George Orwell. He was born June 25th in 1903 and died January 21st, 1930. Pretty short life, but amazing books left behind. So, you know, how it goes. Orwell has written many classics that are still popular today, such as Animal Farm, 1984, and many others. So this book was written and published August 17th, 1945, at the conclusion of World War II. And World War II ended like 1941. So in those 4 years, he came up with this book, published it, and it's like so spot on. Yeah. You know, it's crazy how good that was. So this book was chosen by David. It was his turn to choose a book. So I wanted to ask, what prompted you to choose this book?
Because I read 1984 in high school, and we all talked about it, how great 1984 was. And then I knew about the book. I just never read it. And so I think I wanted to use this opportunity to read a classic. I mean, 1984 was killer. Animal Farm was amazing as well. So I wanted to pick something good.
A great author for sure. The 1984 book, also really good. If you haven't picked that up, go check that out. The whole idea of Big Brother watching you, that's awesome. And you know, David's talking about how they read 1984 in high school. John, I believe you read Animal Farm in high school.
Yes.
Yeah. So I didn't get to read these books in high school, but I think that they should be kind of like mandatory reading. So in high school, I had to read like To Kill a Mockingbird, Great Gatsby, books that I looking back, I'm like, they don't really have as much application as like something like Animal Farm.
Of Mice and Men.
Mice and Men was good.
Have you seen the movie Great Gatsby?
Yeah, the new one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty solid.
Yeah, the old one's cool too. I watched it in high school.
Yeah, the old one was good. We had read Romeo and Juliet too. Watch the old one. If it's a high school watching it and they ask you which one you want to watch the old one and thank me later.
All right.
Hey, is 1984 okay? Because Animal Farm's like an allegory. It's a book written about the past, like a government of the past that he's like representing. And 1984 is like a book about the not so distant future. Is that book also an allegory or no? Because
no, so an allegory is a book written about, or like an essay written about past events.
Okay.
So that's not an allegory, but it's like a dystopian narrative.
It's an algorithm.
An algorithm.
shut up, dude.
Right. But if there's teachers watching this and you get to choose a book to teach your students, let's say you're in high school or you're maybe like entry level college, definitely have your students read Animal Farm. I think it's super interesting. It's parallel with historical events and it's good prompting discussions. So definitely would recommend you pick that up and make it part of your curriculum. And if you haven't picked it up, you're just like an individual, highly recommend you pick up Animal Farm as well, and then let us know what you like about the book. Is there anything you don't like? Write it down in the comments down below, and we'd love to be in communication with you. So we'll start by getting into a little bit of the historical context. John touched on it a little bit. This book is an allegory of the Russian Revolution. Back in history, if you guys can remember back, is called the Bolsheviks. It was kind of this revolution of communism in Russia in the past, kind of dethroning the Tsar, the Russian monarchy, the formation of communism, and then the installation, and then what it became. So it runs parallel with that. They nail a lot of the stuff. I don't remember all the details of history around that region, but it's very parallel.
Yeah.
And so it goes through the whole events, and it includes the characters. So some of the characters in this book are Mr. Jones. So Mr. Jones is the human that runs the farm in the beginning of the book, and he's supposed to represent the Tsar at the time, the Russian monarch. And Old Major, who gives he's like this elderly pig, and he gives a talk to the animals of the farm, and it's supposed to represent Karl Marx. And so his ideals are formulated into what's called animalism in the book, but it represents communism in the historical context. And then two other pigs were mentioned. There's Napoleon and Snowball. So Napoleon represents Joseph Stalin, and the tyrant and adopter of communism and installer in Russian history. And Snowball represents Leon Trotsky. It was kind of like a competitor for the leadership role of communism in history, but was kind of antithetical to Napoleon, where he wanted to organize unions, he wanted to develop industry that would benefit the communists, the working class. Like in the book, they talk about the windmill, which is supposed to represent industry. Where
not just that, before he gets like chased off, he's like, "There's going to be a sheep committee, and there'll be a president of the sheep committee, and there'll be a hen committee, and there'll be this committee." He's talking about how he that'd be like him laborizing. I mean, organizing different unions for labor, being like, "You'll be in charge of your own work." But like in the book, it shows that those animals really couldn't. Well, no, I don't want to get it. Never mind.
You're good. You're good. And then, he comes up with this idea of the windmill. And through this windmill, we're going to generate electricity. You're going to get a 3-day work week. You're going to get more food rations, all this stuff, kind of idealistic future. And he ends up getting chased out of Animal Farm by Napoleon and his dogs and whatnot. And so the dogs are supposed to represent the KGB. There's another pig named Squealer who represents the propaganda machine in Russian past. And it was a tool of the regime to ensure compliance with the populace. And Boxer, who one of the main heroes of the story in a sense. This guy's a hardworking horse. He represents the hardworking class that keeps their head down and works hard to further the development of the revolution and Animal Farm. His two sayings were, "I will work harder," and
Napoleon's always right.
Napoleon's always right. And so this represents the working class of Russia at the time, and they were fully behind the installation of communism, because instead of working for somebody else's means, they're working for their own means, and they own everything. And it's, in a twisted way, it's not like that, but at least they think that, and because that, they work harder, they eat less food, things like that. So
and that shows at that time people really were like, dude, Stalin's got this shit figured out. He's really looking out for us, and all we gotta do is put in the work he's telling us to.
Right, exactly.
I was just gonna say that all that sounds so good on paper, to them, they're like, why would anybody rebel to such a great strategy? Like, this is the one. This is almost perfect.
And then again, they'd be like, well, you don't want Jones to come back, do you?
Right.
Like, well, no. They're all right then.
I think we're good then, right?
We're good then.
And then one of our favorite characters of the book, his name's Benjamin. He's a donkey on the farm. Those of you guys that don't really know much about farm animals, donkeys live a very long time. I think they can live 40, 50 years.
That's crazy.
So longer than any other animal on the farm. So he represents this apolitical class or apolitical individuals in the population. John, do you have something to say?
Got that line where, oftentimes the animals are like, wait, this doesn't seem right, or whatever. They question his stance on things because he never truly buys in to the. He never truly buys into animalism. And in the beginning, he says something like, "None of you guys have ever seen a dead donkey before," which means he's seen this shit before, and maybe not exactly what's happening right now, but farm's always going to be a farm, Yeah.
Yeah, he's this wise old donkey that's seen many regimes come and go. And he's cynical about the revolution, as he's seen the same bad outcomes across different regimes. So he's, there's people that we see in life nowadays. I'm thinking most people at least like to portray themselves as a Benjamin type character, where I'm apolitical. I keep my hands and my nose and my thoughts out of politics. And I think a lot of people, there's a lot of Benjamins out nowadays. I think there's a lot of sheep out. The sheep are just kind of this class that's given slogans and given you'll take what we tell you to think. Right. And so the sheep represent kind of just the more normal class.
Literally, they're just the sheep, the people who don't need to critically think. So to unpack that and kind of the hierarchy of what the farm is. So the pigs are like the thinkers, okay? And if you know anything about a farm, I worked on a farm in high school. Pigs are one of the smartest animals. They are the smartest animal on the farm.
Mhm.
Then you break it down. The goat, Muriel, and Benjamin could both read. Muriel could kind of read, but a little bit.
Yeah.
But Benjamin could read pretty good. He just never told anybody. And then it goes down. Boxer could know like 4 letters. And Clover, the other horse, knew like some of the alphabet or the whole alphabet, but couldn't quite read.
Yeah.
And the dogs could read, but they really didn't care about the words at all. They just cared about what their master had to say, which is like the military, government workers, stuff like that. But the sheep, they couldn't remember all 7 commandments. So they were taught a slogan: 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. To sum up animalism, if you couldn't remember the different commandments, which is like an animal shouldn't sleep in the bed, an animal shouldn't walk on 2 feet,
Not drink alcohol.
animals shouldn't drink, stuff like that. You got more?
The 7 commandments.
Oh, I just thought you knew them too.
Oh no, you're good.
But the sheep couldn't remember all of them because they're not thinkers. They couldn't read. They for sure couldn't remember anything. But what they could remember was 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. And oftentimes in the story, at like pivotal points where like the pigs are going against the original commandments, and the animals are like, they're like kind of like, wait, is this right? The sheep would always break out and be like, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad, and then like totally, just kill all thought because no one could think over just them screaming these slogans. And I mean, even in today and throughout history, you can look back at like different slogans. The crowds just say, you know?
Right. Yeah, we're gonna get into those in kind of our discussion. But yeah, there's slogans, and the sheep were they were spoon fed them. You know, when they were to learn new slogans, they were taken out to this field.
Yeah.
And they were trained new.
We're getting ahead right there.
Right. Yeah. So we're gonna get into that. But a couple more characters from the book, and we're not going to discuss all of them. We recommend you do. There's going to be a link in our description that has a link to a Quora website, which has a breakdown of all the individual characters, what they represent in a historical context.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're interested in that, go ahead and click that description link in the description, and then you'll kind of get more an in-depth idea of kind of what we're talking about. So
and this book too, we crushed in 2 weeks or something.
Yeah,
it's a pretty easy, read.
Yeah, definitely. You can read it a couple hours, and the audiobook's like only just under 2 hours or something like that. So it's a quick read.
Yeah.
So you could for sure crush it very fast.
Yeah,
one day.
Definitely. All right. So there's Mr. Frederick, who's a neighboring farm who represents Hitler in Germany. And in the book, Napoleon's debating whether to make a deal to sell lumber to Mr. Frederick or Mr. Pilkington, which Mr. Pilkington represents the West as a whole, including Winston Churchill and Franklin Roosevelt, the United States, and Great Britain at the time. And in history, Russia ends up making a pact with Russia to split Poland down the middle, and Hitler and Germany end up breaking that pact, right? And in the book, it's a void check, right? Or it's like a check that does not work, right?
Well, yeah.
So the parallels in this book and the history it's amazing. The allegory, the way it's written, everything's super amazing. So shout out to George Orwell for that. So we'll talk about some key points in the book. We've kind of discussed a couple, but let's start with Old Major's speech. Does anybody remember Old Major's speech and kind of the importance of that?
Karl Marx.
Yeah.
Death to all humans.
Yeah.
In a sense.
Yeah. So he talks about a song that he had forgotten that he had heard a long time ago when he was a baby, and he sings it. It's a Beast of England.
Yep.
And pretty much the song is a song about rebellion and against like authority maybe, or the regime maybe. And he's like, hey, this is what I know. Give me 1 second.
Yeah. So animals will in a short synopsis of what Old Major's speech is, it's the birth of animalism, where humans have been a tyrant to animals. They get fed just enough to live. They get a bed, but it's not very comfortable. And they live on this farm underneath this tyrant. And
he's like, humans are the only ones that don't produce anything on the farm. All they do is take.
Right. And so he provides a simple solution to a complex problem.
Mhm.
Right. One of the quotes, I believe, and I'm just going to kind of paraphrase it, was the reason for our problems is summed up in one word, and it's man. Right. And so we as animals, beasts of England, should be our own leaders, and which is eerily reminiscent, if not identical, to what communism is. Right. The upper 1% rules the lower 99%, and we 99% should rule ourselves.
They're the problem.
Right. We should all work together as a community rather than as individuals.
Right.
And so it's parallel to communism. Was there anything else you guys remember from Old Major's speech?
Yeah, he talks about, he's like, hey, I don't know when this rebellion is going to happen, but what's important is that you remember the spirit of what I'm telling you, and that we keep this like ember of rebellion going, and we don't know when it's going to happen, but when it will happen, it'll be for generations to come a good thing. And then he soon dies after that. And what happens soon right after that? Circumstances in the book kind of align where the animals end up doing the rebellion, and then the animals are like, "Whoa, it happened that fast! We did it!"
Right.
You know? And at that point, that's when Trotsky and Stalin were still doing this whole thing together. That's when Snowball and Napoleon were still doing this thing together.
Right. Yeah. The pigs were all ruling as like as a group rather than
like
one individual.
Yeah.
And so the Beasts of England can represent the Communist Manifesto written by Karl Marx. Right. So the Beasts of England is published to the community. The community now disseminates that information where, like, hey, we don't know when this is going to happen, but now we have this doctrine where we can share it to maybe the people that come after us if it doesn't happen during our lifetime.
Right. And like, let's unpack that too. Like, post-rebellion, surprisingly, they end up having a good harvest, right? The other farmers around only have bad things to say about the now animal farm. It's no longer called the manor farm, right? The other farmers are supposed to be Germany and the West. And then later in the book, because of change, Snowball exiting and Napoleon taking over, they end up having a very bad harvest, right? But the animals are always like, we're being told we're getting more food, but they're like, but we think we're getting less,
Right. Yeah. They're the propaganda machine Squealer in the book comes out and he's like, man, we have 200% more increase than the last year. We have 500% more increase in harvest than last year. And so they're fed these facts. Then they take them at face value. They don't really take that data and try to analyze it themselves. The sheep can't even read. They can't think for themselves. And, animals just learn the alphabet. How they're supposed to learn the numbers.
Right.
Right. So they're given lies, right? So
those eggs were a lie.
They were a lie. And so circumstances happen, the rebellion happens, and the creation of the seven commandments happens. So the seven commandments are: whatever goes upon two legs is an enemy. Whatever goes upon four legs or has wings is a friend. No animal shall wear clothes. No animal shall sleep in a bed. No animal shall drink alcohol. No animal shall kill any other animal, and all animals are equal. So these seven commandments were painted on the wall where the animals could read them if they wanted to. How many really could, right? But now we have these seven published rules that we all live by and laws. And things start to happen. There's a slow step towards tyranny of the pigs. And it starts with I believe it's the milk, right? It's the first thing that happens. So the cows are like about to bust with milk because their udders are just full.
Right.
The cows, and as soon as the milk's gathered. They're like, all right, let's go have our harvest. And they go have the harvest. And when they come back, the milk's gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, the chapter literally ends like that. The milk
They
was
notice
gone,
the milk was gone.
and it leaves a little mysterious feel.
Right. And then they harvest apples, and nobody
Right.
gets any apples. They're never added to their rations. And
And what's funny is like, okay, Snowball's kind of the one that he was kind of the balance in the
Right.
between Napoleon. But even him with the balance, he was like, well, I mean, like we do get the milk and apples, like fuck them, like I'm just like and he's even kind of like he kind of like labeled the good one, but even him, he was like, let's not tell them about the milk and apples, you know?
right.
Which is just funny.
Right. And then the pigs, I think Squealer comes out and he's like, man, I know you guys, I hope you guys aren't thinking that we want to eat these apples out of some sort of privilege. Right. And I'm so glad to use the word privilege in the book. I hope you're not thinking that we're doing this out of privilege. We're doing this out of necessity. Right. It's backed by science that apples help with the health of pigs. Right. And as leaders of the rebellion and leaders of the farm, you wouldn't want us to like not have these apples, right?
And then it gets further to like, well, that it's out of necessity that we have to do this, but also at the end of the day, you still don't want Jones to come back,
right?
So we have to eat the apples.
Exactly. So they like, I know you're not thinking this is out of a place of privilege. Like we're not trying to be unequal because we have to, right?
Yeah,
it's out of necessity. Comrades. And so these slow things start to happen. The apples and the milk, the pigs, remember that no animal shall sleep in a bed was one of their commandments. The pigs end up moving into the house after it was designated a museum, right? And nobody's really going to go in here. The pigs end up sleeping on beds. And so that's another violation. Right
at that time in the book, there's like the scene where they hear a loud noise outside at night, and all the animals come out and they find Squealer with fallen over with a ladder and a bucket of paint and a brush.
Mm-hmm.
And what it's alluding to is that he was messing with the rules. And like the next morning, Clover, which is the horse that who woke everyone up, she asked Muriel to read it, and the commandment was like, instead of no animal should sleep in a bed, it was like no animal should sleep in a bed with sheets. And then Squealer was like, see, comrades, we're not sleeping in a bed with sheets, we're sleeping in between the sheets. He's like,
we're sleeping between comforters.
Yeah. And
it's
they're
not
like, oh, but they're like, I don't know, the board says so. So like, and then the boxer's like,
must have misremembered.
He's like, Napoleon's always right. And then the sheep are like, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. They're like, well, they do got 4 legs, so I guess it's all right.
Right. Yeah. So you see this slow change in the rules, or what you hear in today's culture, moving the goalposts. So you see this slow change. John mentions, in between sheets, they add this kind of at the back end of their commandment. Another one was the pigs, when they end up moving into the house, the animals in the farm and the barn, they start smelling like this sweet scent. They're like, man, it smells good. They must be cooking up like some food for us, some new rations. And I think Benjamin goes, man, that smells like they're cooking barley, right? And so the pigs end up finding like a casket or a store of whiskey in the house that Mr. Jones used to have, and they party really loud. And they even get to the point where Napoleon's so hungover that he thinks he's gonna die.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
And he's like, as his dying commandment, no animal shall ever drink alcohol ever, right? And they were setting aside this like paddock of the farm that was supposed to be for retired animals. And
dude, let's talk about that real quick. The retired animals thing.
They set up a retirement age for all different types of animals. So like a horse is supposed to retire at 14. Pigs are supposed to retire at like 12. All the animals have various ages.
It's all age adjusted for how long an animal lives. And like the thing is like, once a horse is 12 years old or whatever, he can spend his remaining years in the pasture that's dedicated for their retirement. Instead of like typically this is also very important. In the beginning, in Old Major's speech, he talks about, he's like, the second you can't work, they will get rid of you. They will send you to the knacker. That's a part I remember in the speech.
Yeah.
And what's different about animalism, because it's animal driven, it's like employee owned, that you'll be able to retire. And what's funny, it's not just communism. I think about it, think of like our own lives, our own parents. Everyone's always talking about retirement, literally always talking about retirement.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever see anybody retire? Like, I don't know, like that's the thing. Like, even now, people get to the retirement age and they figure out that they can't actually live off of the money they get from retirement. So they have to continue with like these part-time jobs or continue working longer than you expected, like, and blah, 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 blah,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, that's even mentioned in the book. It's like, they had talked about all these different retirement ages and animals and how they should retire, but nobody ever saw an animal retire.
That's what I was getting at. Like in the book, they're like, and especially as the book goes on, they go, some of these animals end up being at retirement age and still working.
Right.
And again, they still have not seen animal retire yet, and it's been years in the story.
Right. And that very pasture that they were supposed to set up for like the retirement animals, the pigs end up setting up as like a barley crop area. And so they start growing barley there. And
so they can make beer.
So they can make beer, whiskey, whatever they're going to make. And so they end up actually getting another delivery of whiskey to the house. And that night, the commandment is changed again. So no animal shall drink alcohol, the addition is now to excess.
It was almost like every instance there was thought, like there was a feeling something was like off about the commandments being changed, but the system of like the slogans and then the like reiteration of like what the sheep were saying, and how like I guess like the structure was of power, that it got canceled out almost every time, or they were like, oh, we must have messed up, it's our fault. Yeah, Napoleon's always right.
Napoleon's always right.
Yeah.
Well, it makes me think, when I worked on a farm, we electric trained our pigs, but we electric trained all the animals. And like, we would every few days, a whole field, like, 100 yards plus, I would move the electric fence post like 10 yards horizontally to give them new grass to eat. And on the other end, I would move it so like it would shift the field,
Right. Yeah.
And it's almost like in 6 months we would be in a totally different area than we were 6 months ago, but inch by inch. These animals, as the story goes on and stuff, and even just with things that we constantly face, we don't see it, but inch by inch, you're losing ground. You could be losing ground in a direction, and then these animals are like, they're trying to remember, like, is this better than what it was before? And they honestly can't remember. And like sometimes we get like getting our rights taken away all the time. We're like fighting our own government about like the Patriot Act was like having our rights taken away. The TikTok ban is like, if you look at it, it's pretty much about taking your rights away, about what you're able to see online. And then people are like, how are we living like this? What is like this? It's like, well, look, I mean, at every turn, they are like inch by inch trying to take away what seems like our rights,
Yeah.
And then there's people around me that are like, 4 legs good, 2 legs bad. Trump's bad. Democrats are good. It's like, fuck.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me think too, like, you don't see sudden changes at your places like you frequent. Let's say you get a Starbucks coffee every day. If you've gotten a Starbucks coffee every day for the last 10 years, you've seen the slow progression of like, let's say at one point this coffee was $4, and then 6 months down the line it's $4.15, and another 6 months go down the line it's $4.50, and it's slow enactments to gradually get you there, rather than a like quick big change all at once. So it's the things that are happening, they all happen slowly, because it's like the stick. You can take a stick and bend it really slowly and it'll bend. But if you were to like really fastly change it, it's going to break, right? If you're going to try and bend it. So it's this trying to develop elasticity in your population rather than kind of snapping them at a rigid point, right? So you see this kind of happening culturally everywhere, whether it's what you buy, whether it's how you vote. There's all these different things that are happening slowly and kind of like ductile elastic changes rather than rigid like snappings.
Yeah.
And so yeah, we're going to kind of get into our discussion a little bit here shortly, but the last thing that I want to mention was there's two more things. The pigs towards the end of the book start looking more and more like the people that they were trying to get rid of, right? So they're trying to get rid of Mr. Jones. They make all these commandments of the 7 commandments that we're all supposed to abide by. One of them being that you shouldn't walk on 2 legs and that you shouldn't wear clothes. And they hear this rooster come out, and Napoleon and all the pigs come out of the door of the farmhouse, and all the pigs are walking on 2 legs. Some are better than others, and they're all wearing clothes.
Yeah.
Right. And as they're out there, all the animals are shocked, but the sheep are like, they were trained. They were taken to this pasture outside to get trained on a new slogan. And
they were pre-programmed for a new slogan.
Right. They were given a slogan, and the pigs come out. Everybody's like flabbergasted that they're walking. They're wearing clothes, and the sheep come out and they're like, 4 legs good, 2 legs better. 4 legs good, 2 legs better. And they say it so much, people don't have a time, the time to come up with a thought and mention like,
to protest in the moment,
Right. Yeah. They're like a loud crowd. You can't even get anything across.
Interesting.
Leading up to this, because like the animals can't wear clothes, but leading up to the 2 legs, so they walk on the 2 legs, the young pigs are all wearing ribbons and stuff, and the young pigs are all going to school, and like that's representing in the rebellion and the communism. They didn't like the 1%, like the czar and the royals, and like how they would wear these big dresses and have these big balls, and they'd go to like the universities, and like they're like, us working class people don't get to do that. Well,
right.
It shows within one generation of communism, all the communist elites who were running the country, all of their kids were the new elites. They were, because they were all wearing ribbons. They were all like doing the things the old royals were doing. And then the animals were like, wait, is that right? And then like the pigs were like, no, you don't understand. We have to raise them right so they can run the farm correctly.
Right. Yeah.
And so because they're destined to run the farm, because they're smart.
They were always met with like aggression too by like the dogs, right? Like there was like a reaction of what do they do? Like they hurt
fear.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, is that one of the things you're going to touch on, Jay?
No, go ahead.
It's a good one. Can I unpack that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so like early in the book, the dogs have babies, okay, and Napoleon takes the babies away, and then you don't see the babies for like months, and then out of nowhere, these not quite full grown, but grown enough, like German Shepherd type dogs come out, and they're like military fashion around Napoleon, and then they start they kill a few animals, I think, at some point in the book. But really the big thing is anytime anybody has something to say negatively, they'll growl at them and be like, hey, we could take you down at any moment, and sometimes that does happen. And like what that is it's like a couple things. It's like you said, the KGB, but it's like at a young age, communism, they were having like junior commie camps, and they were building people fully developed in propaganda.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like disassociated with like the normal population of people. So when they went to go enforce these draconian rules or like show power, there wasn't like oh, these are my comrades, because the dogs only listened to Napoleon, the dogs were never like, these are my comrades. There was never that bond. And that was one of the ways that he was able to slowly keep, as you say, shifting the goalposts or whatever without any protest, because he had power. And like even in communism, that's one thing. In our own culture, like let's look at that. Like, what is our danger that we face when we want to protest stuff? Well, for example, there's cancel culture now, and it goes both ways. But
Yeah.
If you say something that goes against DEI, for example, you could lose your job. During the height of the pandemic, if you said something that was making people vaccine hesitant, you could lose your job. And like people, like that's the truth that was happening. There was like really real big repercussions of like any sort of protest, even just like asking the questions. People were kicked off of Twitter for like asking questions. That's just as much as like real threat and danger than like being killed, because if you can't make money, I mean, you're isolated from everything.
Right. Yeah, and it brings up an interesting point because you talk about what are the threats nowadays, council culture being one of them. There's new dogs that are born. Napoleon takes those dogs as puppies and trains them in the way that he wants them. So they're people that kind of execute the authority of the kind of the executive branch, we'll say, of Napoleon's reign. And so it makes you think, because like there's dogs online, right? If, like John was saying, you can get removed from platforms for saying the wrong thing, or saying something that isn't approved by the authoritative source. And so dogs get sicked on you, right? Like
I mean, look, just in our own life, the Boeing fucking whistleblower, the guy on Boeing died.
Right.
You guys know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
He's like, hey, they're knowingly making like bad planes. And
Right.
he literally he suicided himself. Like they fucking killed him.
Right. And
not even virtually.
there was some doctors out here in Kern County, California, who were at the height of the pandemic that were like, hey, we're not really seeing stuff that matches up with what we're being told. Maybe we should kind of take this different approach. And the videos were taken down. All their stuff was removed from social media, and they weren't actually seen online again. And because it didn't match the narrative of kind of what we were being told at the time. And so dogs got sick on them. And so we see these dogs around today. We see every single one of these characters in Animal Farm existing in current culture today. And so it's important to kind of recognize the signs that are happening in current day culture, because we won the war. World War II is over, right? But the ideology that existed at that time, the ideology of the Soviet Union, the ideology of communism still exists. You don't kill an idea.
You think it comes from the new elites, the new born again pigs with the ribbons? In today's culture, it would be like the new idealists that come from rich, wealthy families that like maybe aren't in touch with like reality.
That's complex. The problems are complex, but I would say
it would be more. No, it'd be the Beast of England song is what inspires people, because like again, like the bring it back. The original thing of Old Major was supposed to be that like all the animals rebel on all the farms, and then like the difference is Stalin was like, no, I'm actually going to just make the Soviet Union. We'll just have communism here,
Right.
So like what we're dealing with is like people still today like idolize Karl Marx and like think he's like, no, his ideas were great, just like Stalin was bad.
It was put wrong. It was implemented.
And Castro was bad, and fucking
change the commandment.
So,
ultimately, the idea of animalism got to different farms, though, right? China, CCP. Right. This idea of communism did leak into different societies around the world. You had Venezuela, you had various communist regimes around the world. And so it ended up, you can't kill an idea. You can kill a person, but you can't kill an idea. Yeah. Right. And so we're seeing that today. We'll get into the discussion a little bit. The last thing I'm going to mention is Clover. I think it's Clover that sees the pigs first walking on legs and wearing clothes. And she asks Benjamin, who's apolitical, who doesn't get involved. Hey, look, I know you don't really read, you don't like to get involved, but can you just read these commandments to me? I could have swore they said not to wear clothes and not to walk on two legs. And then when they go look at the commandments, the 7 had been removed, and it was just one.
Yeah.
And the one was all animals are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Equaler than others.
They're equalist. And so we see in this story, the animals wanted to kind of rule their own regime. They wanted to rule the farm, right?
Mhm.
But in that quest to rule the farm and get rid of the, let's say, antagonist, the pigs ended up becoming the very people that they were trying to get rid of,
Yeah,
right?
If not, maybe worse. What it
Not maybe
alludes to,
definitely
what
worse.
it alludes to is like it's actually maybe worse than what it was under the Tsar.
Yeah,
Right. And I think at one point they no, it's for sure. But in the book, they're
Yeah,
the
yeah,
last
it's for sure.
chapter. They
I just don't want to give away too much, you know.
yeah, at the last chapter, the last like couple pages, Clover and a couple animals are looking through the window, and the pigs are having a meeting with the
The,
human farmers,
the neighboring farmers,
the
yeah,
neighboring
the
farm.
West.
So you have the West, you have Germany, you have various other people, in real life, China's there. And they're like, yo, we have to give you guys props because the animals, the animal farm is working harder, getting less food and requiring kind of less stuff altogether. You've now created a farm that works better than ours does.
And they're saying all smugly, like they're like, if only we could do that too. Like that's the thing that I fucking hate, you know.
Right.
And then like what I love is that like we looked at the pigs and we looked back at the humans, and we looked back at the pigs, we looked back at the humans, and we couldn't tell which one was human and which one was the animal. Like,
Right.
dang.
That's the last line of the book. Right. It's like they couldn't tell the difference. They had become the very people that they were trying to get rid of. And it's just it's a warning, right? It
Yeah.
really is a warning. It's supposed to be taken as a warning because we all want to see societal changes in one way or another, right? But we have to be careful about what changes we end up making, because we may become a monster that's even worse than the one that we're trying to get rid of.
Yeah.
Right. And so, we're going to kind of get into what our current day, like, what is it? What we're seeing current day that kind of matches with the book. So we see in the book the use of propaganda and the use of fear.
Yeah.
So whenever the pigs were caught violating one of the 7 commandments, they used fear to make the animals of the farm forgive and forget. They'd always use the threat of Mr. Jones returning. Squealer goes, surely you don't want Jones to return or to come back. Surely you don't. And these pigs had gotten into power. They're becoming tyrants, and they use the threat of the past regime to make sure that their animals are on board, right? Their constituents. And so that was one of the tactics they used, and they used slogans as well. We kind of talked about it, and eventually it had changed. But do we see sheep shouting slogans today? Can you guys mention some slogans?
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Well, just one fucking like you talked about the old regime. I mean, all the time I hear all the time. It's like, well, no matter what, we don't want Trump back. Don't forget, it's bigger than this. It's either Trump or the end of the world. So they're telling everybody, you don't want Mr. Jones back, right? And they're like,
Yeah.
no. They're like, then fucking sign up for hell then.
Right.
Like, oh.
And on the flip side, it's you have Make America Great Again people, right? And they're like, look, you don't want Biden back. You don't want Biden back, right?
Yeah.
So you don't want Mr. Jones back. So you're giving slogans on both sides. There's sheep.
Yeah.
There's sheep on every side of the spectrum of society, right? There's some COVID slogans that were given out. Hey, you don't want grandma to die. Hey, you want to be able to go see grandma, right?
Hey,
And then,
mask up, 6 feet apart, all that stuff.
Right.
It means
And on
nothing.
the flip side of
There's
that, it's
no
like,
sign.
look,
There's no signs.
right. And on the flip side of that, they're like, look, this thing's actually hurting you. That they're giving you is actually hurting you. So there's slogans that are used on both sides. And, there's the sheep of the world that kind of just take what they're given. They're a part of like a herd. And this herd, whether it's the Black Lives Matter, whether it's Make America Great Again, whether it's Trump, whether it's Biden, you're in this camp, you're given a slogan, and that's what you do. Right. And I think most people are that. And like if you're on Twitter or if you're on Instagram or you're on whatever social media site, you're dealing with mostly sheeps.
I was just going to say social media is the perfect breeding ground for seeing the slogans that match up with what you want to think.
Yeah, but
go ahead.
But damn, it's like the opposite too, though, because like without Twitter, you'll have all the information that allows for critical thinking. And I'm not saying like I'm not a sheep. I hope I'm not. But because like of all the information I'm able to get, off of like Twitter and stuff, I'm able to critically think. I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I agree with both statements. Like, but like Twitter in that period of time, like 2021, 2020, was like a period of like Twitter. Like it was hard to access true information because where else were you grabbing your information from? You know what I mean?
It's everything. It's everything.
Yeah, and everything. And so my like I relied on the people that were like giving me the source of like, hey, we're gonna present you some stuff, and we might get like destroyed for showing the public this, but this is what's happening, and you can see it. Doctors are falling off.
Yeah,
people were just disappearing off Twitter.
The dogs.
It's like something's here
Sicking
on
the
this
dogs on
platform that they don't want people seeing.
yeah, and I mean, Twitter files.
Yeah,
ended up
Yeah,
coming-
like,
confirming.
Twitter files is huge. Twitter files is huge. Like they literally talk about like, hey, you can't have these people on the, you know, and they knew the information was correct.
Yeah,
And then they pulled well, we only did this because of this, so there's a reason, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
You didn't want
it
this to happen,
was
right?
always
Yeah,
because it's always for our safety, and like I
Yeah,
hate that.
for your
It's like, okay, my safety threshold is different than my neighbor's safety threshold.
Right.
Why does that affect my decision making? You know,
Mhm.
like,
We don't want Jones to come back.
Yeah, you don't want Jones to come back, man.
Yeah, but I know. Isn't that what sucks, dude? Fuck that. You know,
4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
4 legs
Yeah.
good, 2 legs bad.
Yeah, so you know, you bring up a good point. It's like it's all for our safety. A lot of the things we see today in current culture, and we hear this from different people. A lot of these changes that are trying to be made societally, at least you know, speaking for America and kind of the West, is a lot of the changes are out of compassion, right? Like
they're disguised in compassion.
Yeah, that was a
They're
true
disguised in compassion.
so like trans women are women who want to be compassionate to trans lives and make them feel like they're you know, affirmed, right?
These athletes, these male athletes that are competing against females, were through compassion affirming that they're women and literally letting them fucking steal titles away from girls, injure young girls. I mean, all for compassion. What about the actual compassion? For
Another one here in California is you can loot and steal from businesses as long as it doesn't exceed $995,
crazy,
right? And we want to do that to be compassionate to people that can't afford it, and because if it's anything less than that, it's racism, right? So we want to be compassionate to minority races, right? So it's all this idea of we want to be compassionate.
How quickly? I don't know. I would just love to hear that argument from the opposite side. Like, how quickly does that disintegrate a society? Like, which we're seeing in real time. But if I think we could just look back at time, has this ever existed, and see how fast this society disintegrated into like just garbage because we allowed people just to take and steal. And then you also in the same state of California, you have people like working their asses off just to pay like their rent, their taxes,
health insurance.
Yeah, like it's like what the fuck?
Well, then if you want the answer to not the answer, because no one's got the answer, but 1984 would be the lesson to learn if we're going down that lane of thinking, you know? Because like that's who the pros are. That's who the inner and outer party is, you know?
Dude,
like that's what that is.
You know, this makes me think of have you guys seen the video where it's like a news anchor or something, and it's a news like segment, and it says like, this is an attack on our democracy, but then like another another one plays, and then that's exactly what it makes me think of.
Yeah, Big Brother gives out the message.
That's propaganda. Like if you can fucking see it in a video, that's what that is. It's like, this is a threat to our democracy. To our democracy, and it's like you know.
Yeah, there's a Squealer does exist today. You know what I mean? Like these events, World War II, World War I, Vietnam War, all these different events may have concluded, but the ideologies that came out of them are still existing, and the fight still goes on, right?
Yeah,
but it's an ideological battle.
It also
Squealer right now.
It also breeds the opposite side to get way more stronger than it ever could have been. Like, would it be fascism? Like to be something that it never would have been if this over here didn't exist. The communist revolution, right? Like we're just exaggerating and creating two extremes to exist now, which has happened in the past, which would have never existed if one of them never created it, like never started. So I don't know. That's just my way of thinking about it. But like,
no. I mean, I think both of them are like,
because it was an idea at first, right?
It is an idea.
Benjamin, or not Benjamin, what's his name? The first pig?
Old Major.
Old Major first had an idea, stood up, made the speech. A lot of people Animals were like,
behind it.
okay, let's get behind it. That idea sprang into something over time, created something. Let's
Yeah,
just
but
say,
I don't think fascism is an idea or an ideology. It's more just
Well,
like
it's just another type of government, just like capitalism.
exactly.
But
Yeah, but
it is
but,
an
but they're
idea.
like communism is like an idea.
what would be the opposite of like communism?
Capitalism,
Capitalism. Okay.
right? Communism means as a collective, as a community.
Everybody's equal.
Everybody's equal.
But
But
some people are more equal than others.
capitalism allows the
What is the truth in communism? It's like and that's the thing. When they say everyone's equal, they mean everyone's poor, which is you find that on Animal Farm. And except more animals are more equal than others, the ruling class get to be like ultra wealthy.
Very, very, very.
At one point in the book, they say, and I love this part. They go, Squealer, with great difficulty, could look through both eyes because he had gotten so fat. All the other animals were starving, but Squealer, with great difficulty, could look through both eyes because that's how fat he was. Because even when things were bad, things were good. Actually, things were great. They were just poor.
Right. Yeah, and fat's like a symbolism for greediness, right?
Correct.
So like he had gotten so greedy that he had difficulty seeing out of his eyes. He had so much fat on his forehead.
There was outright just straight up lies like from that regime though too. You know, like they were like, we're all the food's doing great right now, but they're pouring sand into the like buckets to make it look like they had food. But
totally.
top there. So there was sins of commission happening for sure.
Yeah, definitely, for sure. One thing I wanted to mention too is, we are talking about it. There's a lot of sheep out there. We know there's dogs that exist. But what I think is really important is that the Benjamins get involved, right? So Benjamins that have kind of seen this thing, they can recognize the issue happening. Being apolitical and kind of laissez-faire, hands-off about it, the goalposts are going to continue to get moved.
Yeah.
And I think what we're starting to see now is, there's like online people that are kind of speaking up against what we're seeing, these changes. But I think it's important for people and like regular people that might be Benjamins to also stand on business.
Yeah.
I want to say there was pigs that did not fuck with what was going on, and they just got killed.
Right. Yeah.
So the pigs truly do symbolize like the smarter people. Sometimes there's just smarter people, more capable people. And when that's just true, like that's what capitalism, that's like for real, cream does rise to the top. And they were questioned, but they got killed,
Yeah.
Benjamin's supposed to be like, I thought he was supposed to be the peasant class. Am I wrong on that? He's supposed to be just the apolitical class?
Yeah, apolitical guys, individuals.
Okay.
Yeah, even though let's say the pigs didn't mean any harm, like they recognize, damn, we pushed this way farther, we should stop this or whatever. If the pigs weren't able to stop it, it continued to go on, and they were like incapable of stopping it, but they let it go on. They didn't take a step away and go help the other animals. They're still a part of the reason why it continued. It's just like Nazi Germany, like the officers that don't agree with it, the citizens that know it's going on, but they're like, I'm not doing it. It's not my but it's there. It's happening. So you're still guilty by
association.
Yeah.
I mean, dude, what it is you, like you're saying, guilt by association. If you're not speaking up, you're allowing it to happen.
Just like you said.
You're a responsible party.
Yeah. Just like how you're saying more Benjamins need to stand up. Well, since we're not standing up, we're actually a part of the problem. We're actually a part of the reason why this is happening.
Yeah, and they talk about silent majority, right? There's this term going around culturally, the silent majority. A lot of people recognize things that are going on societally that they don't agree with, but they're allowing it to happen. PBD podcast mentions tolerant Christians.
Yeah, he went in.
Yeah, he went in. He's like, look, dude, how tolerant can we be? Like at some point we have to like draw a line, right? And if we don't draw a line, we're gonna end up at this place that we don't recognize. Joe Rogan mentions in his podcast the two boats that were going parallel to each other. You're on one boat, and then let's say the boat, that's
with Dr. Phil, boat, huh? Yeah.
They make a 1 degree turn, but over 100 miles, they end up, so far away.
Yeah.
Right. If we're on that boat and we allow this 1 degree turn, 2 degree, even 5 degree turn, we end up in this place in the ocean that like we can't even recognize. Hey, look, we're supposed to go to freaking Cuba. We're supposed to go to this destination, but we're way over here. Like, how did we end up here?
Yeah,
right.
Slowly but surely.
You're seeing it happen currently in society. You see it happening as current events are happening, and if we don't speak up, that 1 degree change takes us somewhere that we don't recognize and didn't want to be.
Yep.
And so it's a call to action. If you see something that's not happening and like you're not about it, you don't agree with it, like stand on that. It's okay.
Well,
Like,
okay.
disagree.
One of the reasons why people don't stand on it, the silent majority thing, again, it comes with like the threat. Okay. In the book, it's the dogs. In our life, it's maybe you lose your job and stuff, you know?
Mhm.
I think the animals we're missing, but what we're capable of doing is that if you can develop tools in like your toolbox or enough skills where you're financially secure, where you can, if you lose this job because of, like, for COVID was a big example. People talk about staying on business. Well, there are companies like, well, we're going to fire you. And maybe you worked there 10, 15 years. And
Right.
maybe you have like family members calling you being like, John, don't fucking do this. You're dumb
Right.
if you do this. But like the reason why like I was able to stand on business and like why people like are able to stand on business, like the job thing, I was like, I am always going to have a job no matter what. I have like a skill that I can stand on, you know, and like,
Yeah.
they literally can't take that from me, and they need that thing, you know, because like,
Right.
it's not like my skill was a common thing. I think it's like a, you know, so my skill is welding. So, you know, they can't take that skill away from me. As long as I have my hands and my eyes, I'll always be able to weld.
You've developed a skill that's undeniable in the marketplace.
At least in the marketplace. Yeah, exactly. In the marketplace. So that like I was able to be like, even if I lose this particular job because of the vax, doesn't mean it's the only one. So like
Right.
I'm able to make a stand. But if I didn't have that luxury of having that, you know, maybe I would be less likely to stand on business, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
He's AI proof, 100%.
I am. I fucking am AI approved, dog. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. A lot of people are fearful of losing the income that they have, the money, the, you know, relationships. There's all those things.
So
but,
socially, man, I had people fucking call me, you know, talking about like,
right.
and you know, I met you guys during COVID. Remember when we first go out, people were like crazy. They look at me crazy because like I was like very like I don't believe in this shit at all. Like,
Yeah.
and like they'd be like you want to hang out with this guy, and like thank God you guys did. You
Yeah.
know?
How could you?
But socially, at that time, some people might look at me, and people like me who weren't taking the whole lockdown. Like I didn't think it was for my safety. They were looking at us as radioactive, that it was bad for them socially to have someone like that around, especially in California. Now it's different. It's different in different areas, but I know, like for example, the mask thing. They would look at me like I'm radioactive. And not because they thought I was spreading germs, but because I wasn't doing the thing that they were told to, which is 4 legs good, 2 legs bad.
Right. Yeah. You weren't
Exactly.
calling
And
them.
it's like it came out of fucking nowhere. How much, you know, but fucking whatever, you know, so just all of a sudden accept the new reality. Thought that's crazy, you know?
Yeah. And I want to say to viewers, like, if you have a differing opinion, it's okay to stand up for that. Like, it's okay. The dogs are going to come after you, but if you've developed a skill that's undeniable, or, you know, you're willing to make that change, then like I'm about it. Stand up on it. Like,
Well, and you know what?
supposed to stand for something, or you fall for anything.
You know, like the TikTok bill, talk about like how like it's taking our rights away. I brought that up. It's about like, hey, if we decide things are like dangerous, we can pretty much ban off the internet.
Yeah.
It's like, no, what would be great is that if you disagree with something, you should be able to put that out there. And then if you're wrong, someone can give you an argument and literally map out all the places you're wrong, you know?
Right.
And if all that shit, if that math checks out, well, guess what? You're now wrong. You know? Like that's what's great about the truth. That's what's great about the truth, is that like it's just the truth. And that's what communication is like so valuable, you know? And they took that away in Animal Farm. They're slowly but surely are taking it away from us.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
trying.
The biggest skill I think somebody can develop is knowing, like, admitting when they're wrong and making the change. Right. Like, we had read Ultra Learning. It's all about kind of creating a scientific, following a scientific method to make improvements for yourself. If you have, let's say, a core belief, and you find out that it's wrong, your results say that you're wrong, you have to now make that change, process that information, and move forward on a different paradigm, right? That was wrong. Let me try this. This is like a competing one. Let me try this and see if this one's right. If that result's wrong again, you have to be able to make a development and kind of polish up this life that you have and your behaviors and your habits in order to get as much right as you can. That's what we're all trying to do.
You know, the talk about like programming and propaganda and then like figuring out that you were wrong. Just real quick, when I was younger, I definitely bought into the whole, you know, because I'm like we were all super young when 9/11 happened. I had family members that went to Iraq and fought. Jay, your dad was in the military.
Yep.
I was for real, like those guys are for sure the bad guys. For sure they are. Red, white, and blue, baby, all day.
Right,
okay.
right.
And like we were supposed to be there because what they did. Well, now that I'm older and I can like the truth, you know, I can read about the truth and actually what we did and like there was no weapons of mass destruction, all that fucking stuff,
Right.
you know. Turns out we were wrong. Actually, we might have been the bad guys, kind of the bad guys over there.
They're not
And
even in Iraq.
yeah, and we were totally wrong, and they were not the bad guys. If anything, we were, and I was wrong to think that, and my paradigm shifted. You know,
Right.
about that, and that's good. We can be wrong and we can recorrect. You know, like the Middle East is not bad. You know,
Right.
but that was propaganda when we were young. For sure, they're bad guys. We're Americans. Wrong.
Yeah, exactly. And then you make that change, right? So
Yeah.
A call to action for the viewers. If you have a feeling you might be wrong about something, or you're getting a lot of pushback on something, just analyze that belief. Look at the data, analyze your result, and see if it's actually something that is working for you. And if not, be willing to make the change. So that concludes our discussion about Animal Farm. And we want to thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Paradyme Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Let us know what you thought. What do you see in current day culture that reflects Animal Farm? Drop that down in the comment box below. Remember to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and follow us on all our social media platforms. All the information you need will be down in the description box below. And always remember, the work you put in now equals who you will be tomorrow. Peace.
Amen. Amen.